Beauty in Black is back, y'all, and we're recapping part 2 of season 2. But we'll do our best to cover it so you don't have to watch the other parts. Basically, Beauty in Black follows the Bellarie family who are rich. Kimmie was a former stripper who ended up getting married to the patriarch of the family and is now the new CEO whom everyone hates. In the last cliffhanger, we had Charles and Varney getting held up at gunpoint. These two are gay sausage lovers, but Charles is a hoe and loves to sleep around. Charles quickly realizes that the masked men are not cops but robbers.
I recognize your shoes.
Leave it to a gay man to know shoes. The intruders force Charles to empty his safe and put everything in their bag. On the way out, they are shocked to find the cut-up body parts in the bathroom. In the last season, Charles killed some men who tried to rob him. Varney tells Charles that the reason he is in this mess right now is because of his hoe lifestyle. But instead of changing his ways, Charles decides to kick Varney out of his life for good. Meanwhile, in the last season, Rain had pushed a boy out the window because she thought he was taking advantage of Kimmie's sister. In the aftermath, Rain finds out that the boy was Jules' son. Jules is a very dangerous henchman. Alex tells Kimmie and Rain that he'll take care of the problem. Then he takes Glen to Whitman, saying that Glen fell from a window at the barn. Glen is still alive, so Whitman volunteers to drive him to the hospital himself. Rain explains that she only pushed Glen because she thought he was assaulting Sylvie. She then blames Angel because he was the one who was in charge of watching over Kimmie's younger sister. Rain didn't even know that Glen is Jules' son. When Kimmie finally asks, Sylvie reveals that though she just met Glen, what happened between them was consensual. Kimmie reveals that Glen is still alive and is in the hospital, but she prohibits Sylvie from visiting him, but she refuses because Glen's D was too good. Meanwhile, the matriarch of the family, Olivia, plans to kick Kimmie out of the company somehow. The former decision-maker of the company, Mallerie, plans on working with Kimmie now that Kimmie is head of the company. Felicia, a streetwalker, calls Mallerie, offering information about Kimmie, but she refuses to share the tea unless Mallerie pays her $1,000. Mallerie refuses, so Felicia hangs up and says, "Bye, Felicia." Somewhere in Italy, Horace is finally experiencing the effects of the treatment on his prostate cancer and learns that he's probably going to live. Dr. Bernardi tells him he can finally go home as long as he keeps taking his medication. By the way, Horace is a closeted bundle of sticks, and Horace wants his doctor to bend him over. Roy, Mallory's husband, is just waiting for his father to die, so he's dumbfounded when Jules says that Horace is getting treatment done in Italy. Jules reveals that Kimmie threatened him. Roy is acting tough, but he's looking for ways to get Kimmie's sister and Rain taken out of the will. Jules finally learns that his son is in the hospital. Officer Alex is frantic because he knows that Jules will grill him for answers. When Angel sees Alex and Rain talking, he warns Rain that Alex is not to be trusted because he works for Jules. I'd rather trust the fine Alex than that Latino man who probably voted for the Orange Man. Unfortunately for Alex, Jules orders him to come to Stanley Hart immediately. When Varney, the family lawyer, returns home, he finds Roy waiting for him. Roy starts asking about his father's will and learns that though Varney has filed it, it will take time for it to be on record. So Roy demands that Varney contact the clerk and pull out the will. Varney is afraid that Roy will tell Horace about his sexuality, so he has no choice but to obey.
God, you don't bring bitches in your place. You like some big cock diesel motherfuckers in here, huh?
Varney makes it clear that he can only delay the will and not pull it out. Varney then calls the clerk and tells her he needs to change the language in the will and will return it once he's done. At the office, Mallerie asks her brother-in-law, Charles, to take her to the strip club, but Charles says he's not in the mood for that, so Mallerie asks Varney to accompany her. When Mallerie sees that Officer Traxon is her new driver, she kicks him out of the room right away. Jules is devastated when he finally sees his son. Alex explains that there were no cameras in the barn, but he's guessing Glen must have fallen off his horse. Alex also adds that Kimmie wasn't at the barn when he saw Glen, but Rain was there. Despite being threatened, Alex insists that Kimmie and Rain were not aware Glen was Jules' son. Later that night, Kimmie confides in Rain. She wants to make sure that they are all in the will just in case Jules wants to get back at them. She knows she'll be blamed for what happened to Glen. Though she's worried, she thinks of telling Horace everything. Rain then says she no longer trusts the little Latino boy. Traxon follows Mallerie to the club and reports back to Jules. Mallerie is just waiting for Felicia to finish work so she can ask her about Kimmie's secret. Meanwhile, Charles is so burdened by what he did that he finally calls his mother. When Olivia comes over, the sight of butchered bodies doesn't even faze her. Charles tells her that it was self-defense and that a second group of robbers took everything in his safe. Feeling sorry for her son, Olivia asks Charles to leave and let her clean up his mess. Then Olivia's men arrive to clean up the bodies. It turns out they were the same men who robbed Charles and took everything in his safe. Olivia is furious when she learns that Charles only had 40 grand and nothing more. Damn, Olivia is cold and calculated. Though her cleanup crew is always ready to work, Olivia is losing faith in them, especially after they messed up in robbing Horace. Still, Andy assures Olivia that everything is cleaned. Back at the mansion, the tension is heavy at the dinner table. Kimmie decides that it would be best to send Sylvie to college, so she'll be far away from this batshit family. But Sylvie starts to rebel.
It's funny the strippers and whores know what's best for me.
Sylvie just wants Glen's fine ass, but I can't blame her. Roy is overjoyed now that he has seen the will. He tells Jules that neither Kimmie's sister nor Rain is protected in the will. Jules doesn't trust Roy a bit, so he says he'll check it himself. When Roy tells Charles he got Varney by the balls, Charles warns him not to mess with smart people. When Mallerie finally talks to Felicia, Varney is left to enjoy the sight of male strippers on the stage. Charles is surprised that Varney is not home, but he's more surprised when his mother calls, asking him to pay $250,000 for the house cleanup. Charles says he doesn't have that much, so Olivia tells him to get a loan because the cleanup crew needs to be paid by Friday. You see, Olivia has an expensive lifestyle, and her money is about as dry as her vag. Felicia tells Mallerie that Kimmie hooked up with a rich man who wanted her to work at his office. Felicia doesn't know the man's name, except that his first bitch was Jillian. After hearing the name, Mallerie shows a photo of Jillian and then of Roy to Felicia. Not only does Felicia confirm that it's Jillian in the photo, but also adds that Roy's D was quite girthy. Though Mallerie is annoyed that Felicia is sleeping with her husband, she still pays the stripper and thanks her for the information. A stripper named Evan learns that Varney is a lawyer and tries to flirt with him, but Varney rejects all his advances. That man is fine. I'd pay thousands to watch that tape. Back at the mansion, Alex says Glen might not remember anything when he wakes up. Then Alex asks why Angel is living with them too, but Rain just says Angel is part of their complicated family. When Rain mentions her intentions of buying the club now that Delinda is dead, Angel tells her she has to go through Giovanni first, Delinda's son. It turns out that Giovanni is in Delinda's will, so the two friends go on a mission to see Giovanni. Elsewhere, Norman, Horace's brother, asks Jules about Judge Harold's case. Jules assures him that the authorities recognize it as a gas explosion and that there is nothing to worry about. In a previous episode, Norman blew up a judge's house, killing him. Mallerie and Varney decide it's time to leave the club when they see everyone around them humping each other out in the open. Meanwhile, at the club, Angel introduces Rain to Giovanni. Rain reveals that she wants to buy Delinda's club, and she pretends she doesn't know that Delinda is dead. But Giovanni says that every time he goes to the club, no one wants to show him the books despite him owning the club's license. So Rain volunteers to help Giovanni get inside the club the next day. Varney and Mallerie dip out the club since they start to see people getting their back broken. Evan approaches Varney again, asking him to help him with legal matters. Varney doesn't want to, so Evan gives Varney his number in case he changes his mind. When Andy approaches, Varney recognizes his voice as one of the robbers. Then Traxon tells him Andy's complete name. Mallerie wanders at the back of the club and catches Roy with his pants down, so she turns hood and beats up Felicia. Officer Traxon has to step in to break up the fight. Instead of siding with Mallerie, Roy grabs Felicia and tells his wife to leave. Furious, Mallerie grabs her coat and stomps her way back into Varney's car. As for Roy, he goes back to getting high and getting all the cake he wants, and even gets some baby powder. A friend of Angel's wife sees Angel spending a lot of money at the club. The news reaches Yolanda, and she's pissed because she's broke AF, so she decides to see Angel. Rain wants to go home, but Angel is not yet done partying, so she calls the fine Alex with his nice body and asks him to pick her up. Norman visits Jules at the hospital. Because Jules is looking after his son, he doesn't have the time to deal with all the Bellarie family drama. However, he knows that Mallerie caught Roy at the back of the club. Elsewhere, Olivia is frightened when a familiar face shows up at her house in the middle of the night. The unnamed woman demands that Olivia pay what she owes, and because she doesn't have any money, the woman proceeds to break off one of Olivia's stanky legs. Mallerie keeps crying in the car, but she doesn't want Varney to comfort her. Then Varney reveals that Roy ordered him to delay Horace's will for Sylvie, Rain, and Angel. He's not sure why, but he thinks it's because Roy wants to hurt the three. However, he assures Mallerie that he only delayed it for a day. Jules calls Kimmie just to say that his son is still in critical condition. He proceeds to get Kimmie to admit she had something to do with the accident by saying Alex ratted her out and that there's footage of her at the barn. But Kimmie calls his bluff and threatens him back. Furious, Jules promises he'll hurt Kimmie's loved ones if Glen dies. Horace learns about Angel spending thousands of dollars at the club, so he immediately calls his assistant and tells him to cancel Angel's credit card, especially since Angel hasn't serviced Horace's eggplant yet. Dr. Bernardi orders Horace to calm down because getting angry is bad for his health. Kimmie calls Rain and tells her what Jules said. Rain sides with Alex and assures Kimmie that they can trust the Foyn man. By the time Alex arrives, Angel is still partying, so they decide to leave without him. Yolanda gets in the club with the help of her friend. She confronts Angel for spending almost $40,000 in a single night when he can't even give her money for rent. But the guards stop Yolanda and pull her out of the club. That night, Varney meets with Evan. Evan wants to hire Varney. Unfortunately, the attorney charges $1,400 per hour. Still, Evan reveals that he and his sister were arrested for drug trafficking after they delivered a package they didn't know had drugs inside. But the judge let them off the hook, and in exchange, they have to work at Jules' club. Evan adds that he's hiding his sister after she witnessed people getting killed at the motel where they were staying. When the stripper mentions Rain's name, Varney says he'll look into it. The Foyn man asks Varney to take him home with him.
I kind of want you to take advantage of me.
Show it to me, Rachel. Later, Roy brings Felicia to his house, unaware that Mallerie is home waiting for him. He takes the stripper around and gives her Mallory's clothes before offering her a chance to live with him. The two start to get hot in the master bedroom, and we can't show it, but Felicia is very flexible. Then Mallerie puts chains around the door to keep them from getting out. Then, using a racket as a wedge to maneuver the car, Mallerie drives the vehicle in the direction of the master bedroom, hitting both Felicia and Roy. Let's replay them getting ran over again. A fire breaks out and Mallerie sits back, lights a cigarette, and watches it all unfold.
You want to dance with the devil? I'm the devil, bitch!
That's just the first 3 episodes of Season 2, Part 2. Should we cover more? It is a hot train wreck.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you would like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.